and running. What do we have here today?
Welcome to the show, Irving.
Hey, thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
How's your day going?
You know, I can't complain. Nobody listens when I do.
Nice.
Nice. Before we get started, won't you let the people know who you are, how you got started, and where you're at today?
I mean, I'm Irving Pedroza. I'm a personal injury lawyer here in San Diego. Take cases all over California. And I was actually born in Guerrero, Mexico. So I was brought to the United States when I was 6.
There you go.
Oh, thank you. And been here ever since. Other than that, I just take personal injury cases and help people that get injured. So
nice, man. So how'd you get into personal injury?
it's a long story.
Take us back to the beginning.
So look, I think growing up, I always felt hopeless, powerless. I went through, I was undocumented. I didn't speak the language. I grew up in a poor environment, gang environment. My father was in jail. My brother ended up in jail, became homeless, So you name it, I experienced it as a kid, or, my family experienced it, or my older brother's schizophrenic. So through all of that process and all that growing up, I always felt like I knew what needed to be done, but I was a kid and it felt powerless. I felt helpless. And so the idea that created in my mind was I need to become something where I am no longer powerless or helpless. And even though I may not be able to help, I know how to help. So that was the idea of becoming a lawyer. And to be honest with you, even going through law school, I didn't even know the personal injury world existed. And because that's not something that you don't grow up watching on TV, car accident lawyer.
Right.
You don't unless you see a commercial, but I grew up, watching Spanish TV. That's rare, at least it was back then.
It's probably more like criminal justice and things
exactly.
like that. Yeah.
Criminal or corporate. So you don't actually, so I didn't even know it existed. Right. And so, I just happened to land. I always say it's personal injury kind of found me. Cause I did immigration for a while. I hated that. And so with personal injury, I'm not taking money away from people. I'm taking money away from corporations that have a ton of money.
Right.
And a lot of times people come to us in their most desperate need. For example, I'm representing someone whose husband died in a car accident, right? And they were looking forward to a life together. They're under 30, and just her whole life just dramatically changed. So things like that, and so now I'm able to, in a way, help them and not harm them, and I don't take money away from them.
Yeah.
If anything, my goal, I always tell them, is my goal is to get you money, right?
Yeah.
So, that's why I always say I absolutely love what I do, but it has nothing to do with everything. It has everything to do with my growing up.
Yeah.
Because it's different than most stories. So
That's awesome. I feel like personal injury attorneys get a bad rap. It's I feel like there's a lot of stereotypes around being money chasers, et cetera. But from my experience and probably our experience, the more and more attorneys we talk to, the more and more I hear this type of thing, and it's you guys are really truly helping people, especially because you take everything on contingency, right?
Right.
It's no money up front, and I'm fighting for you, I'm fighting for your rights. And a lot of people the majority of these people are in pain, right? They're suffering for one reason or another.
yeah,
Right.
no, absolutely. I think if you think about it, it's like every profession, right? In every profession, you're going to have a percentage of people who don't do it for the right reasons.
Right.
Right. You got to find someone you're comfortable with and someone who as a person. I always tell people, I want you to know me. I'm not any different as a lawyer to I am right now, and you're right. Most of the time they're in pain, and I always tell my clients, I'm look, my first priority is to get you as healthy as possible. Forget everything else, because like, look, especially after COVID, right? I think more people remembered like the important things in life, right? I always tell like everyone that will listen, is like 3 things in life that are the most important: time, family, and health. If you take either of those away, what do you have?
Right.
Nothing, right? Like,
Yeah,
and it's
that's
the
true.
same thing. Some of these injuries take all those 3 things away, right? If you take away your time, we're done.
Yeah.
If you take away your health, you can have all the support in the world. You can have all the time in the world. You're going to be miserable.
Even all the money.
You can have all the money in the world, but if you don't have the health,
Yeah.
what are you going to do with it, right? And family, right? You can
Yeah.
be as healthy as possible. You can have all the time in the world. You're going to be miserable because you have no friends, family to share it with. You know, so that's the way I look at everything. And unfortunately, a lot of clients, you know, all those 3 things get taken away to some degree.
Yeah.
So
That's crazy.
Could you share with us the aha moment you had when you decided that you were going to go personal injury?
I don't think it was an aha moment. It was more of like a darn moment.
It was like, oh shit, moment.
It was like, yeah, I don't know. It's like, so I can tell you, I was doing immigration, and I did immigration shortly after I became a lawyer. And with immigration, you lose more times than not, because the immigration we were doing is cancellation of removals, basically someone who's already on deportation order, right? And so with immigration, with those types of cases, you lose 97% of the time. I had to communicate with the family that we were representing that their husband, the breadwinner, that we had lost essentially, right? And it was heartbreaking. It was telling the mom, the wife, look, we lost your husband's case. And she just couldn't believe it, because she's like, he's the breadwinner. One of their kids was like 2 or 3 years old, fighting like some sort of, I think it was cancer, some sort of cancer.
Jeez.
She didn't work. She didn't speak English. And not only that, I also had to tell her, oh, by the way, you still owe us some money. Right? And at that point, I was like, I don't want to do this the rest of my life.
Yeah.
You know, like, not only, there's 3 things I hate most. I hate losing. With immigration, you lose, like I said, more times than not.
Yeah.
97% of the time. I hate giving people bad news. Could you imagine if your whole life was like,
Just letting people
just like,
down.
it's like, I got some news for you.
Always bad.
And number 3, I hate taking money away from people that don't have money.
Yeah.
You know, and like when that happened, I was like, I gotta do something else. This is not my thing.
And now you got the opposite. You get to tell people, give people good news. You get to give them money, and
I'm telling you, it's a whole different perspective, right?
Yeah.
Like now, like, look, don't get me wrong. There are cases that we lose, and there are cases that we do give bad news, but we take the risk.
Right.
As opposed to them, and they do take some risk to some degree, but it's not as often, it's not as common.
Right.
And it's, you know, case by case, but like for the most part, we're the ones that are like investing time, investing money, you know? So that it's a completely different dynamic than what it used to be. So,
Interesting. That's cool, man.
so that's my essentially aha moment, but
I
you
feel
know.
like that's a good aha moment.
So like you lost a case, you had to deliver this bad news, and like it probably ate you up inside, rightfully so. And what was it like? You were delivering this bad news. You're like, I gotta do something else, and then it's like personal injury, or was it like a friend talked to you, and then
So none.
did you did you
So,
fall into it?
I fell into it because like I was like a baby lawyer, you know, and keep in mind, like, so I'm still, you know, I don't come from a family that can just help me. You know, even to this day, my parents don't speak a word of English. They don't have money. So I basically started applying, right? And like the first job that I called, interviewed, was personal injury. And like, I kid you not, I had done like personal injury internship during law school, and I hated it. You know, because like what you do as a law student and what you do as generally as a student is way different than what you're doing as a lawyer. And I just fell into it, you know, and even like I'm telling you, the first 6 months of me working as a personal injury attorney, I wasn't even doing attorney work, you know. But during that time, like I absorbed everything, and I learned things that had I started just as a personal injury attorney, I would have never learned. And like at the time, I was not having fun because I was doing like paralegal work. But now looking back at it, I'm like, that's the best thing that could have happened to me.
Yeah.
You know? So it wasn't something where it's like, oh, I'm done with this. Now I'm going into personal injury. I just fell into it and I learned, you know, I love it. Right. And, but I almost feel it's like I learned to love it for the right reasons as opposed to the opposite. Right. And that's where, to your point earlier, when you say it's like personal injury attorneys may get a bad rap.
Right.
It's for that reason. I feel like they're not into it for the right reasons. As to, for me, like, look, I just love it based on my background and based on what I know, you know, pain to be, you know.
Right.
Like, I can relate to the clients because I've been through pain. I can relate to them culturally, you know, I can relate to them emotionally. I've had so many clients that tell me, well, look, the injury may not be that bad, but my emotional trauma is. I've been there.
Yeah.
I have emotional trauma. I've had emotional trauma my whole life.
So you're able to relate really well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, I know that, look, like, and even I've had physical trauma in my life, and physical trauma heals. Your emotional doesn't. You can literally seemingly be living a normal life, and all of a sudden it hits you, and there goes your entire week. There goes your entire month, you know, because of some thought that popped back into your head or some memory. So, for example, I started writing a book based on all my traumas as a kid, and I still haven't been able to finish it because when I started writing it, I went through deep depression. To where, because like every single moment that you relive memories, it hits you again.
Yeah.
It puts you back into that same place. And so at some point I'm gonna finish it.
The book is probably fire though.
Huh?
The book is probably fire.
Man, I hope so.
If it was hitting you like that every time, then yeah, it's probably deep.
Yeah, you know, and I think it tends to be, and especially
Yeah.
because like in that book I touch on things that even to this day I'm like it gets to me. At some point I will finish it. I'll give you guys a copy of it. But every time that I would get into it, right, like I would get into this emotional roller coaster. And so that's why, like, even with my clients now, it's like, I get it, you know, I get sometimes something triggers them, you know, and I understand it. And I can understand how that's even more painful than your injury itself. And not to minimize your injury, but, you know, you live in your head 24/7. So,
Yeah,
you know.
that's crazy.
Is there something you wish you had known when you first started, that if you could go back and tell yourself, you would?
As a lawyer or just as a human?
Both.
Oh man, I just complicated it for myself. Didn't I?
Well, let's start with
Let's start
one.
with the
Let's start
lawyer.
with one, and then do
All
yeah.
right.
Yeah.
You know, I think one very important aspect of being a lawyer is understanding yourself and understanding who you are as a person. I think it's not that I would go back and tell myself that. I think I would start that process sooner. It's hard to say that because I think I'm a big believer of everyone has their own timeline, right? Everyone, you can't compare yourself to what you're doing, what I'm doing, because we didn't have the same experiences.
Right.
So it's hard to say like I would have started that sooner because there's no possible way I could have because of where I was emotionally. But if I could somehow, I would have started that sooner. Because I feel like the more I understand who I am, I understand myself, the more I'm able to get faster to where I want to be. And the sooner, the faster I get to where I want to be, the better I'm able to represent a client. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
you think the less we understand ourselves, the more we're, I guess, pursuing things that don't fit us or don't make sense to us. So then we're kind of wasting time, right? And like going on all these diversions. But if we understood who we were, we would know like, no, this is the clear path type of thing.
That's absolutely it.
Yeah.
You know, the more you understand yourself, the more you get there quicker.
Right.
You know, and so for example, whenever someone reacts to you a certain way, right, and you react back to them because of society expectations, that may not be who you are, but now you've reacted,
Right.
and now that's put you in a certain situation where you didn't intend to be in the first place. You know, so it's kind of like it goes hand in hand with it, you know.
Right.
So you're absolutely right, though. Yeah. As a human, oh man, that's a hard one. I guess it's that same thing, but I'll go one step further. Forgiving the people, my family, the people that harm me sooner. There's a caveat to that. I would have, for example, growing up and even to this day, I don't have much of a relationship with my father. If you had met me anywhere between, you know, the ages of like 5 and 18 or even 21, my first and only goal in life was to be everything he never was. Right? And I had a lot of hate. But hate only hurt me. It wasn't hurting him. If you hate someone, you're not hurting anyone else. You're only hurting yourself. And so that's what it was for me. And if I was able to let go sooner, I would let go. Just think about how limiting that is, right? My only goal in life was to be everything he never was, right? So like,
So what did that rule out for you?
well, I couldn't end up in jail. He abused my mom. Couldn't be a abuser. At some point, he was an alcoholic. Couldn't be that. I think the most growing up, like now it's changed, but like he almost killed my mom a few times. The most he ever made in calendar year, at least in my youth and growing up, is probably $12,000 a year. You know, he to this day doesn't speak a word of English. And again, like things have changed. I think now I've gotten to a point where I've forgiven him. But more than anything, that's because, like I told you, like when I was holding so much hate, it was harming me. But so essentially it's like I'd forgive the people that created the trauma. But that's not to say I shouldn't use, and anyone for that matter, shouldn't use what we go through as fuel to get to where we want to be. Like the way I always look at it is like, you know, it's like, for example, I speak to like high school students or college students, and the first question I always ask them is like, just think back when you were like 6 or 7 years old. What dream or what did you want to become? Right? That's the first question. The second question becomes, right, now give me every excuse as to why you didn't get there or you can't get there. And if you think about it, all these sorts of excuses start popping into your head. I'm poor, I'm this, I'm that, my parents couldn't help me. So you end up with the list of things why you can't, right? So those are the excuses. So the way I look at everything is like, use those as reasons instead of excuses. And once you change that perspective and that point of view, then like that anger, that frustration, you use that as a fuel to kind of lead you to where you want to go, you know? And so once number one, I accepted, I forgave, now I'm like, okay, because my father didn't speak English, or because my father couldn't make this amount of money, these are the reasons why I need to get there.
Right.
You know, or because, for example, for the longest time, I was angry at him because my brother was diagnosed with schizophrenia, and my reasoning for that was because my brother was he was genius level, and we went through a lot of trauma as kids, and I read that the more intellectual someone is, the more traumas they go through, the more susceptible they become. So I was blaming him for that, right? But instead, what I should have been doing from the beginning is like, okay, those are reasons why I need to get better and improve and change my circumstances.
Right.
But again, I was a kid, so it's
Right,
hard.
it's hard to-
it's hard
It's hard to manage those emotions at that age, you know.
Exactly. So
That's crazy.
yeah, that's why I'm like it's different, but it takes time, and that's why I told you earlier. It's like I wish I could have done it sooner, but there's just no way, you know.
Yeah.
Exactly. Do you feel like you use your trauma as a driver to become very successful?
I think I have to, you know, like, because it's like whenever something happens to you, the way I look at it is like, if you think about it, it's like when something happens to you and it's bad, right? You have two choices. You either dwell on it, oh, it's bad, or the other option is, the way I look at it is like you feel it, you accept it. Once you accept it, you move on.
Right.
Right. And you should always use it as a fuel, as energizer. Because if you don't do it, then it's gonna kind of consume you. If you don't use it as fuel, now it's fuel against you. So yeah, absolutely. I always say the term is like, even sometimes to the point where like I create enemies in my own head. Someone can literally say, remember the comment I said earlier?
Oh yeah.
It's like someone could say anything and I'm like, oh, is it because you don't think I can do it?
Well, bro, The Last Dance, Michael Jordan did that.
Yeah.
Michael
Right.
Jordan would do that.
So I took it personally.
No, it's funny because like when I
Yeah.
saw that, like I was like, oh dang, I've been doing that since I was a kid, and
Yeah.
like I didn't even realize it, you know.
Yeah.
Like literally anything, like someone will say is like, something positive, but I'll take it as like, oh, so you didn't think I was the best, right? So.
Well, it's funny because I recently saw a post, and then I kind of did more research on it. But the guy was basically saying if you look at all these successful people, and there's all these studies, and they analyze their pasts, and they made a conclusion that like the perfect amount of childhood trauma has a direct correlation with the success of these people. And it kind of goes to the point where like what you were saying, like, did you use your past as a motivator to fuel your success? Like a lot of people are fueled by anger or by, when they were never good enough in their lives, all these different things, all these different reasons. And then they also talked about how once you pass a certain point of trauma, then the percentage goes way up where it consumes people and they go on the other side.
It's hard because it's not like you could think of like, oh, let's put our kids through trauma.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Because like nobody wants to do that once you recognize it, right? But it's true because like, for example, I can tell you there is no person in my life that has put me down way more than my father, right? He would tell me, you're nothing, piece of trash, you're an animal, you're worse than an animal. Why are you even, this was back when I was like in middle school and high school, it was like, why are you even going to school? You're not going to become anything. Just go to work and, you're shit, essentially. So like the way I look at it now is like, what anyone says or thinks about me, I don't care.
Right.
The person that's supposed to care the most about me has already told me the worst about me.
Right.
So anything you can say, whatever.
Right.
So it's true, but could you essentially like say that to your kid? No, I wouldn't recommend it, right? Like, but it's true. Like, and I'll tell you this, like, even though I was going through all that in my head, somehow, and like, this is where like the weirdness of you can't predict anything, because in my head, I always believed that, like, no, I'm different.
Right.
No matter the circumstances I'm going through, I'm different.
Yeah.
In my head, I had that in my head. Like I remember at some point we became homeless, and because my father, like, ended up in jail. And so he was the only one working. And so I remember at some point, one of my uncles came from San Bernardino. He took us to one of his friend's house so we could stay there. And so the lady whose house it was, she looked at me and my brother. I think I was 7 years old. My brother was 10 at the time. And by that time, I don't think my brother had just been diagnosed yet. And we were both just sitting. We just sit on a sofa, just quiet. And so I overheard the lady tell my mom, like, kids are weird. They're just sitting there.
Behaving.
Essentially, like looking back, it's behaving,
Yeah.
right? But like to her, is like, they're just weird.
Yeah.
Are they like essentially she was insinuating, are they crazy? Or are they like, there's something wrong with them? But like looking back, I was just like, like I was thinking, I was like, damn,
Yeah.
life sucks. Let's figure out a way to, like get out of it.
Yeah.
But if I had let all those like different dynamics play out, because I remember like this is the one thing I do remember, and I tell these two parents all the time. It's like I remember everything like people used to say around me. I remember some of my aunts talking bad about my mom. I remember everything, and so those are again fuel, right?
Yeah.
Like so any little thing. So, but it's weird. The point is like I said, it's weird because we can't predict it, and I could totally see my experience on someone else just completely like it could have gone the opposite direction,
Right.
So it's a hard balance.
Do you have visions of the future, like
what I want to do?
yeah, where you see yourself going?
Absolutely, dude. Like it's one of those things where it's like if you don't. I always think about it. If you don't plan, if you don't have goals, I kid you not, I write down every goal I can think of. Sometimes it changes, but I write them down just because it's like the best analogy I heard. I'm sure you guys have heard it before, and I read it in a book. I read a lot too, so it's like if you're trying to get to New York, you may not know every single step of the way. As long as you know, like the next, 30 feet ahead of you.
Right.
The road may change. You may run into construction. You may run into a flood.
Right.
But as long as you know the 30 feet ahead of you, then you'll be fine. But you also know where you're going.
Your destination.
Right?
Yeah.
Because if you don't, when you do run into the flood, imagine it's like if you didn't know where you were going. Oh, right now I'm gonna go this other way.
Right.
And now you end up lost.
Yeah.
But that goes back to understanding yourself, right? And if I didn't understand myself, I could never come up with those goals that would make me me and make me happy.
Right.
So, yeah, I have like goals I want to accomplish by the end of the year. I have goals in 5 years.
What's on the vision board right now? What's up there?
Oh man, so much. I think essentially it's like I want to continue improving as a lawyer. That's one thing. Right now I just got barred in Texas, so I want to start getting cases
Congrats.
in Texas. Other than that, the other parts is like I have different ideas of businesses I want to create. Finishing that book is one.
Yeah.
is one of those. And eventually I do want to start a family. I don't have a family right now. Well, aside from mom, sister, and my beautiful little niece who's 2 years old right now.
With your own family.
Yeah, but my own family. Other than that, man, like I don't know. I always think about it as like I'm a person of simple tastes, simple needs.
So tell us about business right now. So I know that we were kind of speaking briefly before. You've been partner at your firm now for 2 years.
Yeah.
Right. And you were at the same firm though before that for a couple more years.
Right.
What's the difference between how I guess you get your cases now than before? Because I know the reason why you became partners because you were a hustler and you were bringing in a lot of cases.
Yeah. So no, I think I always say is like 60 to 70% of our cases come from other personal injury lawyers.
Right.
The other ones are like, previous clients or friends of friends. We don't really do much, advertising. But so for example, a friend that may not want to litigate or try a case, and they think the value of a case is higher than what the insurance is offering it, they'll bring us in on it. And sometimes it just depends on the case, right? But I think 60 to 70% come from other lawyers.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah. And as to how it was before, honestly, like the other part is like just previous clients that, sometimes I'll get a text and they'll be like, "Oh, you're Irving Pedroza, the injury attorney." I'm like, "Yeah." It's like, "Oh, who are you?" I don't know. And like, they're
Right.
like, "I got a case. Someone, hit me or whatnot." I never know where someone's texting me from, but
Yeah.
I receive those or phone calls. And it's always, always good to get like friend referrals. And I get those quite a bit.
So how does that start though? Like, how did you guys position yourselves as the ones to get cases from other attorneys?
I don't know, to be honest. One partner that left started that in LA, and I think for me what happened is I remember at some point I got like an email or phone call from a now friend. It's like, "Hey, so I've heard you're looking for cases," and he sent over a couple cases. And it was like the reason he sent it over is because he didn't want to deal with it. It's a hard, complicated case.
Right.
And I think I ended up getting like 150 on it.
Yeah.
Right. 150,000. He's like, "What did you do?" And then he's like, "Well, I got this case from someone else. Can I introduce you?" I was like, "Sure." And so both those two people started sending me cases, and that case was against a city, right? And so essentially, like now people are saying, it's like, "Oh, you're good with city cases." I'm like,
Sure.
yeah. Why not? No, I always tell people, it's like, look, like people or lawyers won't send you an easy case just because, you
Right.
know. They're going to send you the hard cases.
Right.
If you deliver on the hard cases, then at some point they'll send you the easy cases to maximize them.
Right.
Or like if you think about it, also it's like in any other business, the first case or the first business they send you is because they like you.
Right.
The ones after that is because you produce.
Yeah.
Because if you didn't produce, it's going
wouldn't send
somewhere
you.
else.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting dynamic.
Is there a standard for I guess what the revenue share is on those, or is it like every deal different?
There can be, but every deal is different.
Okay.
For the most part, it depends. Again, it depends on the case. If it's a higher value case, like we're more than happy to give 50-50, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it has to be the right case, you know. But if you told me it's like, look, such lawyers sending you a potentially multi-million-dollar case, I'll do 50-50 all the time. You know?
Right.
As opposed to if it's a really difficult case where, you know, a lot of work needs to be done, then we're taking on all the risk, all the costs, and then it's going to be lower.
Yeah.
know?
So you take most of it in that case.
Yeah.
Got you.
So it depends, you know, and sometimes we give referral fees to like other attorneys who don't even practice personal injury, but for example, criminal defense attorney, right? That aunts got into an accident, but we would have never gotten that case had it not been for that connection. So they get a referral fee, but those tend to be smaller than the ones someone actually worked on. So
Got you.
Is there a reason why you don't do any marketing or advertising?
because it's expensive. No,
But it works.
no, right.
Yeah.
I think it's not something that we say is like we don't want to do.
Yeah.
Is we haven't needed to so far, if that makes sense. Like if, don't get me wrong, if at some point like we're like, oh, we don't have enough cases, let's get.
Right.
But at this point, like we have plenty of cases, and like I don't want to. For example, you see billboard like lawyers. I don't want to. They're normally volume firms.
Right.
In other words, they want to have way more cases, but it doesn't. You know, the value doesn't really matter. It's all it is about volume. The more cases they have, the more revenue.
Right.
But for us, it's the opposite. We want to get higher and higher quality cases
That are worth more.
and because not only are they worth more, but we got to spend more time on it. You know, and we
Yeah.
got to spend more money on it.
Right.
So that's the difference. It's not that I'm against it. It's just that so far we haven't gotten there.
Would it So going back to that, when you, although it might be more high volume, is if people know about, like, let's say something happens, if they see a billboard or they see a social media video or whatever, when they, they're not getting in car accidents or whatever every single day or falling into
A whole.
a hole in the sidewalk, and but because they seen that stuff, when they do, they're gonna think like right away, like, who do I call? And whoever they seen the billboard, the social media video, the radio, whatever it is,
Right.
they're gonna call that person first.
Absolutely. Look,
And even like the high quality cases too. Like, you're gonna get that's sort of the good with the bad. You get a lot of maybe not high quality cases, but with you filter that out, and you do get a lot of high quality cases as well.
it's a balance, and like everyone, like there's no one way to make money in any business for that matter, right? But especially in personal injury. So you're absolutely right. Like it whenever you have more marketing and more advertising, the more exposure you have. The one thing that worked for us, I can tell you this. For example, I had one of those billboard lawyers or someone that markets a lot. They had a dog bite where there was a $12,000 offer. He sent it. I looked at it, and when I looked at it, I was like, "This is worth way more." Right? And imagine, like, he was trying to settle maybe 30, 40,000. We got 250.
Wow.
Right? And so at that point, he's like, "Oh, okay. Why didn't I send it sooner?" Right? So like, I want there to be marketing.
Yeah.
But my pitch is like, okay, so if I'm better, or if I not better, but if I work harder and I get better in certain cases, then I can totally get the full value, and I can put more time and effort into it. So you're absolutely right. We haven't had to so far, and maybe we will in the future if we continue growing.
Wait, is your caseload maxed out right now, or what is it on average? Like, are you guys pretty much never in need of a case? There's always enough cases coming in, or do you have too many sometimes? Or
So it's a combination because if we're talking about, because the way we split in our office is pre-litigation, in other words, no lawsuit,
right.
in lawsuit stage. I think for us in litigation right now, we're just right. Like I don't feel like we have too many. I don't feel we have too few. Could we add a couple more, a few more? Yeah, because like they're always closing. We're always closing cases, so it's a revolving door kind of thing.
Yeah.
In pre-litigation, like those cases are simpler. They're not as time consuming. So I don't believe anyone would ever say they have not enough, or too many actually, because like, again, they're not as time consuming or as expensive. It becomes expensive when it's a lawsuit,
I was just thinking. So, what if, because people, they spend money on billboards, they spend money on radio, they spend a lot of money on bus stop, at the buses, and you're mainly referral based. You want to get those referrals. What if the way you advertise is not for the general market, but what if you do like social media such as like LinkedIn and YouTube and some Instagram, and you do that in a way to where you get more referrals from the lawyers.
Right. See, that's different. And in that scenario, then I'm always on board, because like, if you think about it, who's more likely to see your LinkedIn, or who's more likely to see your Instagram?
Other people in your industry, right?
Exactly. So in that scenario, that's totally different, because like,
And it's cheaper than a billboard.
it's cheaper way cheaper than a billboard.
Arguably, it's better.
Especially nowadays, So that's way different. And look, like I always tell friends of mine, I was like, the more lawyers I can meet, the better, right? And it's not necessarily, even if you forget the referral part of it, it's just the like strategy part of it, networking part of it, right? Like, I may know something that someone else needs in a different case, or like, for example, I have cases in the Bay Area, and learning the tricky part about lawyering, especially in litigation and trial, is every courthouse, every county is different. And so, for example, if I need to learn how the process or the procedure is in like San Francisco or Alameda County or wherever it is in California, I can just hit someone up, or Texas in this case. I can just hit someone up, and if they can help me, it's better. So that's why I will never say no to meeting other people or other people in the industry.
Yeah, yeah. So for your firm right now, would you say growth is more cases, or would it be like a larger staff, more attorneys? Like, what does growth look like for you guys right now?
I think it's a combination.
Yeah.
Because if we do get more cases, we need more staff,
right?
More lawyers, and as we're getting better and not only as lawyers but as the whole team, our case level is improving, and therefore, for example, some of the litigation cases that we would previously take, we're no longer taking because they're too small. But the bigger the case, the more the insurance is gonna fight you. The more they're gonna literally throw everything at you, and the more they throw at you, the more time consuming it is. The more investigations, the more hands on deck that you need on a particular case. So it's always a combination, and especially if the cases are coming from both sides, pre-litigation and litigation. So it's a combination.
Are you on the litigation side?
I am on the litigation.
You in the room.
You're
in the
you
cage.
like to fight.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I like fighting.
You like to go in there and be like, I owned you.
I don't say it quite like that, but
what's the lawyer way to say it?
I don't know, man. I don't. The biggest thing is like I don't say anything. They know it.
Right.
Yeah.
If you think about it, it's like, I'll tell you this quick story. And like, I had a case where we got it from another lawyer. There was no offer on the table. And I've had a previous case with this particular attorney, at least 6 before, right? And so he's asking me, he's like, how much do you want on it? It's like, let's be real. And I'm like, well, if I remember, I think it was a $2,000 offer on the table. I'm like, well, I'm going to be real because you're not being real.
Yeah.
I want 100,000. That's what the max policy was.
Right.
And he's like, give me a week. And he paid it, right? He paid it in that week. And he's like, look, I know you well enough. I know what's going to happen. I know we're going to end up here anyway.
No
so
way.
Well.
And so he represented the insurance company?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
So
crazy.
That's how you know you're a formidable foe, man.
That was a literal submission.
Well, it's like with
It's
everything.
respect too, because
Yeah.
he respected you enough. He went in, like figuratively went in battle with you in the courtroom.
Yeah.
Or your reputation said enough to be like, I don't want to take this guy on.
Right. No, look, like it's like with everything, right? Like your integrity is everything, and at some point or another, like if we need to fold one, we'll fold one, and if we find out, for example, that let's say a client lied, right? I'll be the first one that's like, no, we're done. This is as far as we're gonna get.
Yeah.
But things like that, it's the more integrity and the more believable you are when you do put that stand that no, we're not going away here, then they're more likely to believe you. It's like, oh,
yeah,
he literally delivers what he says.
Yeah.
So I think you're right. It's one of those things where it's like it takes some time, right? It takes some time, but once you get there, it's super powerful.
Are you active on LinkedIn?
I am. Yeah.
Do you ever post stuff like this that you talk about?
Not like this.
It's powerful, like hearing these sides of things, because it's like a lot of times all you hear is like, we settled this case for this much.
Yeah.
We're the best.
Yeah.
But like hearing these stories, hearing, the interesting things that people aren't typically hearing, like you know, the behind the scenes and stuff, you know, how much you care about the results, the actual people and what they're going through. I know you're limited as to what you can talk about, but like hearing that type of stuff is impactful. It draws me in.
Yeah.
Well, especially like myself, like as a martial artist and a fighter, I love the resemblance of fighting, where it may not be with your hands, but it's fighting intellect, it's fighting in your battlefield, which is the courtroom, using the laws as your sword. So that's pretty cool as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you could, I have a question for you. If you could like give any advice for, let's say, an up and comer attorney, maybe he's in law school or he's a paralegal at the moment, what kind of advice would you give him?
Don't chase money. Because I think if you think about it, when you chase money, you're not making the decisions based on becoming the best possible lawyer or anything for that matter, right? You're more like, oh, where's the most money? But where the most money isn't always where the best opportunity is, where the learning process is. You know, like I can tell you I never have and I never will. The reason for that is because if I forget about that, not that it's not important, right? In any business, we're in this for the money. Like you'd be kidding yourself if you weren't, right? But the more I'm able to learn, right, and especially early on, the more I'm able to learn, later on it won't matter. Later on, I could literally dictate what I get paid because I'm still good at it, right? Like because I'm so good at it, like it doesn't matter.
The money's the byproduct of the value you
Right.
give.
As opposed to I had people that like I went to law school with where I know essentially they did the opposite I did. And like now it's like it doesn't even like, it's not even in comparison.
Yeah.
Right? But it's that reasoning because we're so, I think everyone for that matter, we're so like we want things now, right? That we're impatient of the process. There's a process to everything.
Yeah.
And it's all connected because essentially if you think about it, like I absolutely love what I do, right? Because I love what I do, I can spend as much time doing it to become good at it. If I didn't love what I did, I would have no energy, I would have no desire. I would absolutely hate being behind a desk, learning the process, learning how to beat an opponent, learning the methods, the tricks of the trade, right? And if I'm not good at it, if I didn't spend that time, then the money's not going to come. It's all kind of like connected.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
But what we often do, especially when we're young, is like we see other people, oh, they're making way more money. I want that now.
Right. We see the end result.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I want that now. And then you kind of forget, and you forget like,
Then
like
you skip steps.
you
Start
skip
making
some
mistakes.
steps, and
Hurt your reputation.
hurt like it's all. That's why I would tell you it's like it was that it's like I never have, I never will, but because I don't, it will come anyway.
Right.
It's gonna come. And I always say it's like it doesn't matter whether I was a lawyer, a doctor, or anything for that matter. I would have done the same things. Like I would never chase the money, and like later on, you dictate it, you create it.
Right.
But
if you were to add something to that, to those out there listening, figuring it out, don't chase the money, but would it be like focus on a craft that you're going to be continuing to excel in, like sharpening a specific craft? I just felt like in my past, when I was younger, growing up, trying to figure things out, because I had similar advice from my father about don't chase the money will come. And so I didn't, and I just worked on my craft, and I got really, really good at it, but I struggled making money with it. I was what they called a starving artist, because I did music and stuff like that.
I think you're right, but if you think about it, we often hear it's like do something that you're passionate about.
Right, exactly.
Right? But it has to make sense.
Yeah.
Right. So, for example, one thing earlier, you guys were talking about vision boards and future goals and whatnot. They have to align with each other, right? Like you can't say, "Oh, I want to have a $2 million house," but doing what? Like, how did you get to the 2 million? Right? Like you can't go from a high school student to I want a $2 million house. it has to align and it has to be step by step, right? So for example, if you were a starving artist, it's like, okay, so if you want to get somewhere, you forgot the little process in terms of how you get there, the connections, right? Like, because a lot of, and I don't know, like in what you were a singer or a rapper,
Yeah.
so a lot of it is connections,
Yeah.
right? And it's hard to get into the connections unless you have some sort of in or like someone, right? And it's the same thing in like in the legal world. I can tell you a lot of it is who you know, and I think essentially it has to make sense.
Right.
It has to make sense for you. Because even now, I always tell people is like, look, I stopped playing soccer. Soccer is probably my favorite sport. I stopped playing soccer a long time ago.
Yeah.
The reason why is because essentially same thing. I wanted to be the Mexican Cristiano Ronaldo, right?
Right.
But unless I'm 13 again, that's never gonna happen. It's never gonna happen because it's not. I can't get from where I was to that point because I'm not 13 or 11 or 9. Or I think it even has to start sooner than that.
I think it goes back full circle to what you were saying about understanding yourself. If you can truly understand yourself, and I think that's not as easy as it sounds, right? It's very difficult to truly understand yourself, and I think a lot of us discover it later. Maybe it's too late, maybe it's not, but we're at a stage where you realize and you look back, we're like, well, yeah, I guess that this does make sense now because I did have those tendencies and I did like to do this before. Maybe I was, starstruck by the idea of becoming a famous rapper when I should have leaned into my business acumen and been like, nah, you need to be the label owner type of thing,
Right.
and so.
No, you're right, because if you think about it, understanding yourself, it sounds really simple.
Right.
It's really not. I work on it every day,
Yeah.
and I don't think I'll ever get there.
Right.
Right? Because like the best way I can describe it, or I can put it, is when was the last time you sat with your thoughts for 5 minutes?
Right.
Just you alone with your thoughts. 5 minutes. No TV, no phone, no nothing. When was the last time?
Oh man, yeah.
Right before I went to sleep.
But see my point? Like,
Meditation, man. That's what meditation is great.
And it's the meditation, but like even forget the actual practice of meditation. Just thinking, right? No distractions, no nothing, and you will understand or you will see it's very difficult to do, to just sit alone with your thoughts, because just think about us as a society in general, especially now with social media and everything, right? Like, it's hard, number one, to be isolated.
Yeah.
It's very hard to be disconnected. And number two, when we are isolated, we are disconnected, we're looking for a distraction. We're not looking to listen to our mind, listen to what we're thinking. A lot of times, and this is why I write things, right? Like, we don't write things down. We don't, we assume that, I'll remember it later. We don't. Some of the best ideas I've ever had are fleeting ideas, right? If I don't write it down then and then,
It's fleeting.
yeah, it's.
I told Jeremiah, I was like, I always got to write stuff down
Yeah.
still. Like something about the pen to paper that's different than typing or writing on your phone for
I'm
whatever
the same
reason.
way, yeah.
So does the shower count though?
That's I get, man. Like honestly, like during the shower, during a walk, during training, during a run or whatever. I feel like that's when
That's when everything
I have
comes
the
to
best clarity.
Yeah, no, look,
When
I
everything
walk.
just makes sense.
I walk all the time, and I walk for that reason. I don't run because like the way I process in my mind is like when you're running, you're actually like you have to put some physical effort into it, and so you're more focused on the physical effort than the thinking part of it. And I remember
Unless you stay in zone 2. If you stay in zone 2,
yeah.
you can.
That's like a light jog.
It's like a light jog.
Light jog.
And if you think about it, we're often wearing like you listening to music or whatnot. I remember like I read it.
Purposely don't wear headphones for that reason.
Yeah, like, and that's good. Like, I remember I read like Steve Jobs' biography. He used to walk all the time.
Yeah.
Just regular neighborhood walks, and I'm sure you guys have heard like the Bill Gates, how he would seclude himself in like the woods for 2 weeks
Yeah,
with
that
no
cabin that
distraction.
he would go to, that
Yeah.
small cabin. Yeah.
So if you think about it, there's a reason, like, all these are the common themes, but what do we usually focus on? We focus on the highlights,
Right.
the money, we don't focus on the steps that it took to
Process.
get there. Yeah.
Yeah,
and
yeah, for sure.
it's a never ending process,
Yeah.
like it's not something where it's like, oh, once I do it one day, I'm good.
Yeah, yeah.
It's never ending.
Is it the bodybuilder Kai Greene? He would people would always get mad at him because he would post, every time he would post, he'd always be covered up. He'd have his hoodie on every time he would train. He'd be like, "Why don't you show us your muscles, bro? Like, that's why we're here." And he's like, "Because it's not about that. It's about my training. It's about what I'm doing right now.
Exactly.
You guys are so hype on my end result, but this is the reason. This is how I got here." So he would always have himself covered up.
Yeah.
And funny enough, is Kai Greene was a foster kid.
Oh,
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. So that's why he probably has that mentality. And even you, like, you weren't a foster kid or an orphan, but you dealt with a lot of abuse and trauma in the home.
Yeah.
And it forces you, when you deal with a lot of abuse and trauma, and you obviously dealt with the right amount to not go crazy and be a drug addict. So you're able to logically think about things and the processes and the procedures because you had to do it yourself.
Yeah, dude. Like, I'm telling you, like, even to this day, I always tell people, it's like, like, I feel like, essentially, I'm 35 right now. I feel like I'm 10 years old, right? The reason I say that is because I didn't achieve freedom of thought until I was like 25. And so what do I mean by that? Before then, every single day was a fight to survive.
Yeah.
Whether emotionally or physically or even like food wise. It's like one of those things where it's like, if you're worried about, where money's going to come, you can't focus on your getting better. You can't focus on understanding yourself.
Personal growth. Yeah.
If
Living
you're
in scarcity.
yeah, if you're worried about, where, for example, I would always worry about my brother, right? If my mind is focused so much on my brother, and rightfully so at the time, but like I can't think otherwise, or how to make money, or how to, like, I can't, that's why I always say is like, once I'm able to achieve freedom of thought, okay, now it's game on. Now let's see what we can do, right?
That's dope.
And so I think that was the biggest thing for me, but it's hard. It's a process, and I even, like I told you, I'm doing it to this day, but I always tell people, it's like, I think it wasn't until I was like 25 where I'm like, I'm finally free to think what I want. And before then, it's so hard.
Yeah.
Especially through traumas, so.
Man, that's dope. I think that's a good ending point right there, man. We appreciate you, honestly, though. Appreciate you sharing
Thank
all
you
that,
guys for coming.
all that with us. Thoughts about your past and everything. But hey, this is the Get Louder podcast. We appreciate you for coming on, Irving. Yes, sir.
Before we log off, won't you shout out your law
How can we
firm,
find you?
your
Yeah, how can we
Instagram,
find you?
your social
Yeah.
medias, wherever people can find you.
Yeah.
So the easiest one is Instagram is my name, Irving.esq, or IRVING.esq. Law firm is DP, injuryattorneys.com. You can also just find me, my website, Irving Pedroza, IRVINGPEDROZA.com. So I'm findable.
And there you have it. And
Hit him with the intro, outro.